everyone. I'm Adya, and this is Unstigmatized with Adya Garg. Through this podcast, we try to create a safe space for teens to understand, talk about, and manage their mental health. So, if you're someone who's interested in understanding teen mental health, this podcast is for you, whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a teen yourself. Today, we will be talking to Gayatri Bhalla about women's mental health or just students' mental health in general. Gayatri, would you like to please introduce yourself?
Hi, so my name is Gayatri. I study in Shikshantar and I'm 17 years old. I recently turned 17 years old and I'm really happy to be here.
So, how would you describe your relationship with mental health in the past year or two?
So it's safe to say I've had my challenges, because I mean, I feel like the lockdown had a huge toll on our generation, and social media also plays like a huge role in like shaping the way you view yourself. So it had quite the effect on my mental health and 10th grade. 11th grade was fantastic, but 10th grade was like extremely heavy on me. And because your entire like weight as a human being is measured with how good you are at academics, and I wasn't very good at academics. And to add to that, my physical health wasn't very good for a year. So it all had a toll on me. And I somehow convinced myself that I wasn't ill enough to go to therapy or I needed to be broken in order to go to therapy to seek help. But I went and I'm much better now.
So that answers our next question. Have you been to therapy before? Did you like it?
Yeah.
Did it help a lot?
It helped like an insane amount. So I had a therapist that wasn't that great initially. Um, because I feel like when you're a teenager, you're in a transitional phase between feeling like an adult and like not almost an adult. And she treated me like a child, and I didn't want to be treated like a child. But I went to another therapist who just listened, and um, that really, really helped. Like just having somebody to talk to and just like air out what was in my mind, and it really helped with me feeling anxious in school and stuff like that.
So, as I know it, you're interested in psychology and mental health in general. What got
Mhm.
you into like exploring that area?
So my mom and dad are both coaches. So psychology is something that comes up on the dinner table quite often. Or like I'll be talking about somebody like from school and they'll be like, "Oh, is this person the oldest sibling in the family?" Just the way that they're acting and they're managing people seems like oldest sibling behavior. And I've always found it so fascinating the way like humans work because they build up society, and um it's something that's always interested me because in a society where like it's given less importance than physical health, I feel like it's about time we started to prioritize it.
Um, so I think we've discussed that how you had a difficult time with your mental health. How did you manage that? How do you like handle anxiety on a personal level on a day-to-day basis?
um so it started with weekly therapy because I couldn't make it through a day without a panic attack, or I couldn't like go to school. um and so weekly therapy is where it started. Then she gave me like breathing exercises where you sort of like slow everything down. You'll count the colors in the room, or like I'll what I'll do is that I'll look at different textures, like how is the texture of the table different from the texture of my t-shirt or my hair. So I reach out for textures, and that sort of I slow everything down because a panic attack is basically your thoughts moving too fast for you to process. So that's how I deal with it. And my dog helps. So that's one thing as well.
A lot of social media posts are related to mental health these days, and there's like a lot of uproar about mental health. What are your thoughts on that, like whole uproar and just a lot of information that's been passed around on social media?
So I feel like in some ways it can be good because it can like help you know that you're not alone and like help you reach out if you see like problems. But what happens is that you start diagnosing yourself quite often. because like that's even like a problem with psychology students is when they'll read
Yeah.
something, they'll be like, oh my God, that's me. So I must have this particular mental illness. But so that's one issue. And another issue is that because it's been normalized so much, it's also romanticized at some point. And at least for me, that led to me feeling like, okay, no, this is a part of my character. I need to keep the anxiety because I don't know who I am without it. It's like a character trait,
Hmm.
but it's not a positive thing. It's not something that needs to be romanticized. You're so much more than more your mental illness, and not even mental illness. You're like mental distress for that matter. And for me, it also led to the problem that I felt like I wasn't anxious enough to ask for help, or I was exaggerating because this is what anxiety actually looks like. Whereas, like, anxiety is a broad spectrum, it can look completely different, like for different people. And I feel like the fast spreading information is like a double-edged sword for that reason.
I feel a lot of this has happened with ADHD, with like I would say like 60% of posts, social media posts of like mental health that I see, they're about like ADHD symptoms and like, oh, stimming
Oh
and
yeah, five
stuff like that.
ADHD, five, these five
Yeah.
things you have
And I'm
ADHD.
like, and I feel like that's undermined like people who are actually diagnosed with ADHD, who are
For
actually
sure.
dealing with it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, everybody has a little bit of ADHD.
Yeah.
Like, no, they don't. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, like, oh, you have blue hair. It's like, but everybody has a little bit of blue hair. Like, it makes no sense. That's not how it works. So
And
yeah.
it's everything's like subjective. It's not like this set of like symptoms would fit everybody.
Exactly.
Like how it presents differently with women and men. But like
Yeah.
everything presents differently. Subjective. Okay, coming to the next question. What do you think contributes to a good mental space? And like what factors do you take away from it? Like what's good, what's not good?
Um, so I feel like one thing that's very important is feeling like you deserve the help that's coming your way. It's tough because you won't feel like you deserve it, or you won't feel like like, oh, this person's problem is so much worse than mine. A big part of having good mental health is not comparing yourself to others all the time, which can be tough because, like, again, we live in an age of social media, so it's bound to happen that you're going to compare yourself to someone else. Um, I feel like also reaching out to your friends. When I was sitting in the car when I told my parents that I can't do it on my own anymore. I need to go to therapy. So being honest with yourself and reaching out for help. I know it's like a huge cliche, but reaching out for help is a big part towards, having good mental health.
You mentioned like friends. How do you think like our friends and our family, they're like a good support group for us? How can they be a good support group and how they help us generally?
I feel like listening,
Mhm.
that's one thing that's great, not like giving out advice. Sometimes you just want to be heard by them.
You just need to
And
rant out your stuff.
yeah, exactly.
And like, when people start giving out solutions for your problems rather than being like, oh yeah,
Exactly.
that's
It's so
wrong.
frustrating. Like toxic positivity. It could be so much worse, but that's not the point. It sucks right now for me.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like in for friends, I feel like them just being there. Like sometimes you see your friend struggling, and you feel like there's nothing I can do, nothing I can say or do to them. But sometimes your presence is enough, like making them laugh or cracking jokes or inviting them over. Like I've had situations where I felt like I was, my head was going underwater and I was like panicking. I could feel myself descending towards a panic attack. And my friend just started to have this conversation with me and we started a joke. And it pulled me out of that space completely because it distracted my mind. So you think you're not helping by just being there, but you are. So yeah, that's. something that.
What are some common misconceptions about mental health that you see around yourself, that you encounter?
Um, I think so. One is that it's like there's this coolness that's associated with being mentally ill. Like it's joked about, which is good. But I don't like that it's seen as something that's like a needed character trait or like, oh, haha, like what do you know? You're mentally stable. Uh, that's one thing that I find like kind of negative about it. And one is that you need to have a disorder of some kind, or you need to be, as I mentioned before, broken to go to therapy. You can just go because you want to improve yourself.
Mhm.
And um, you don't need to have a disorder to go to therapy, or there can be periods in your life when you're not feeling good, and it doesn't make you less than somebody who has an anxiety disorder. You're less worthy than somebody who has an anxiety disorder to go to therapy, is what I think.
Um, what, sorry, how can we reduce stigma around mental health?
By talking about it. So I guess this podcast is one way that we're helping to reduce stigma. Um, by I think so parents can help by not being like so hush hush about the fact that their child is going to
Mhm.
therapy. Or it's like that's one way that stigma can be reduced around mental health, where panic attacks are treated like they're normal because they are normal. So you don't you like or like dissociation or like actually I don't want to talk about dissociation because it's a completely different in-depth thing. So like let's not go there. But like panic attacks are perfectly normal. And the less we make people feel like they're insane when they have one and just offer support, that's one way we can reduce the stigma that's associated with mental health.
You mentioned talking about it, but I feel like there's so much of random information that's going around because a lot of people our age are also advocating for mental health. But here's the thing, they don't have anything to back up their information. So I feel like getting in touch with like a psychologist or someone who actually has the knowledge about mental health, like I would say at least they have like a degree or they've attended like a class for psychology and mental health to like talk to them first and then go around like telling people what you've learned.
Right. I couldn't agree more. That's so right.
Um, so there are a lot of public awareness campaigns, right? Like I mentioned, with people our age and just generally. What do you think, like, how much of a role do they play in mental health advocacy? Are they
Um,
helping or like,
I feel like they're pretty helpful. Because even if like sometimes we tend to self-diagnose, but if there's even one person who says, okay, this is off, like I see myself doing this, and they reach out for help, even if it wasn't the problem that they originally thought it was, you can get help for other, like there's no such thing as like useless therapy. Like if you end up going to therapy, it's going to help you. It's not like it can't be negative. So if somebody sees that they're exhibiting signs of like having an anxiety disorder, and they go to a therapist, and the therapist says that, okay, listen, it's event related, like you're anxious in this period of your life, or you're anxious before exams, it's not an anxiety disorder per se, they're still helping out the person who has anxiety at the moment, so it's still helpful. So I think so they're pretty good, the campaigns, and they're much needed.
um, I I just realized that we talked about stigma, but there's a lot of stigma in India that's like very apparent, right?
Yeah,
Like parents are embarrassed that their children have like a mental health issue and they won't tell anybody about it in the
right.
family. And like even like generally there's so much stigma, nobody talks about it. Facilities are not as apparent as they are in like foreign countries? What are your
Hmm.
thoughts on that?
Um, I feel like India is not yeah, there's so many physical health problems in our people, and this it's such a huge population that mental health is often brushed aside
Mhm,
because, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, though there were like plenty of criticisms for the order of the way the needs were placed and all of that stuff. If the basic needs are not being met, then I can understand why a country would find it hard to prioritize higher level needs?
mhm.
So, yeah, we need to start prioritizing mental health, but I can understand why we haven't started yet.
That's actually a perspective that I didn't think about, but so thank you for that. Um, how do you see the field of mental health evolving in the coming years?
Um, so I'm hoping that a lot more people will go to therapy.
Mhm,
Um, like honestly, like I've talked to my friends about it, and I sort of like because like you need therapy is like a joke. It's like it's become like I'm not against the joke. It can be funny sometimes, but because it's become a joke, when I actually recommend it to my friends, when I tell them that like, listen, I think so therapy would be beneficial for you because your friends can listen in, they can offer you advice, but they're also children. And your parents, they're going to have a biased opinion about you. So even if your parent is like a psychologist or in the field of psychology, it's impossible for them to have an unbiased opinion about you. So you can be like, yeah, I'm talking to my mom and dad about like my distress, or I'm talking to my friends about it. But sometimes you actually need a professional who can offer you advice without having like a bias that's already there.
mhm. Um, what advice would you give to people who are our age and they're struggling with mental health? Um,
I would tell them to reach out, and I would tell them to go to therapy. Honestly speaking, go to therapy because it is really, really helpful. And if you're in a space where you can't talk about it yet, start airing it out. Don't keep it to yourself because I know it's like it's ridiculous that it's considered strong to not show your emotions, or it's considered strong that, oh yeah, I don't cry very easily. But like there's nothing wrong with showing your emotions. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. So ask for help, talk to people about it. And if you need therapy, don't be ashamed because like it doesn't make you like crazy or whatever other stigmas are associated with it, if you know what I mean.
I do. Um, I wanted to talk to you about the topic of schools and how you think that they can, help students become more comfortable in their skin to help students with their mental health.
So my school has been really good with my mental health challenges that I've had, um, including the fact that I when I was in a bad space with my anxiety, I had to go out of an exam because I had a panic attack. And I don't know what it would have been in the case of any other school, but because panic attacks aren't taken that seriously, they would have, I don't know if I would have been sent back to the exam. Like, okay, beta, you've calmed down now wapas jao. It's like somebody's been like hit by a car and you're like, okay, well, you're fine now. Like we put a band-aid on it. So like, do you want to get back inside your car and go back to driving? Or like, I don't know, we got you a new car, you can get moving. Um, but they didn't do that. They called my mother and I was taken out of the exam. And that was something that was so unbelievably helpful that it was treated like a genuine problem. Or when I was allowed to go home because I was too anxious to stay in school, I was allowed to call my mother. I can't tell you how grateful I am that my school has been able to offer me that kind of support.
With what you said, I feel like that teachers have to care about the kids. Um, I did this episode with an English teacher from Shikshantar, and
Hmm.
she also mentioned how teachers have to like actually care about the students and like be involved and be talk to them on the regular basis and view them as humans first rather than just machines who are just giving exams.
Couldn't agree
And
more.
yeah, um, yeah, and a lot of the times we are put into like this hall where they give us like a 1 hour seminar and like on let's say peer pressure and drugs, and they expect that oh everything will be fine now. Um,
Hmm.
how do you think that we can like improve on that? Because I don't think that a 1 hour seminar like a lecture will help anybody with their peer pressure or their drug abuse.
I guess, yeah, I agree. And I feel like sometimes what can happen is that adults will be on a moral high ground that they think because we're older, we know better. And um, I think so sometimes they struggle with apologizing. Like I've had times when teachers have been rude to me, genuinely rude to me, and they haven't apologized for it or even like acknowledged it. Or I feel like one part of, understanding your students is better is to get off that high horse and, as like that teacher mentioned, view them as human beings. I think so. One of the best things that happened was that we had a seminar on sexual abuse. And I think so something or some senior of ours brought it up that how do you expect us to like go about our lives when Shikshantar doesn't offer basic things about sex education. And an English teacher of ours had a conversation with us about birth control and about how we shouldn't rely on pornographic sites, which I feel like was so helpful and so unbelievable. I mean, it might have been tough for her to bring it up, but it was so great of her because now, like, a few more students are educated and they know how to go about life, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So acceptance clearly plays a big role for school, for parents, for friends, for everybody in the realm of mental health.
Yeah.
Um, thank you so much, Gayatri, for joining us. And thank you to our listeners. Um, yeah, it was a really enlightening session with you.
Same here.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow us on Instagram @unstigmatized with Adya Garg for future updates.